Hello, I'm Sebastian Schmidt, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to create a simple techno track in 30 minutes or less using only free software. Now, it's going to incorporate Reaper, the DAW, one synth, and a series of samples that I've given to you, and I'm supplying a PDF with this video so that you can figure out how to incorporate that all. But for now, without further ado, let's begin. I'm going to set the stopwatch. Hopefully you can see this on the camera. And we're going. Okay. So first things first, I'm making techno. We want to look at the speed of the track. Now on Reaper, that's up here with the corner of the screen. It's set to 120 by default, but I'm going to go for 128 for this one because I'm feeling a little bit faster. Now the first thing I want to do when I'm doing techno is to lay down the kick drum, which is what will give us the groove for the track. So to do this, so again I'm going to go to Insert Virtual Instrument on a new track. I'm going to get Sampler-Matic, which is Reaper's built-in sampler, and get this up. And then I'm going to load a sample into it using the samples that I've supplied with this project, which can be downloaded. And I'm going to take the kick sample, stick it here so we get this kind of sound. Perfect. I'm going to take it down to one voice because we're only ever going to have the kick going one at a time. Perfect. So let's start laying some of that down. Naming it kick if I can manage to spell. Perfect. So we zoom in and we're going to drag out a little section. For those of you who've not maybe delved too much into this kind of software before, the music's represented in bars, and I've made the loop of kick that we're going to do 4 bars because that's pretty standard in techno. So we'll lay it down, and so I'm going to put one kick on each beat, so you get that kind of 4 on the floor pumping thing. So that's 1 on the 1, and then drag across to 1 on the 2, and I'm going to select to make it a bit quicker. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, copy that across to the other sections. There we go, which will give us that classic techno thing, and we're going to set it to loop up here so we can hear it continuously. Perfect. And what I'm going to do is just take the volume down on that a bit because it's starting to go into the red line, which we don't like. So taking that down a bit. And the next step for me is always to incorporate the hi-hats. I like to get the drum groove down first. Some people do it, the melodies and the synths first. I like to get the drums down first. So let's get that hi-hat in. Nice. What I'm also going to do here is put all of our drums in a little folder in Reaper because that keeps us organised. So to do that, we make an empty track and we click that little folder icon to start the folder, and then we click our last track in the folder to double times to close the folder. Sorry. So now I'm incorporating the hat. I make it the same length. Going to take a bit off the volume as well because it's also going to be a bit loud. I like my hats to be quite in the background. And whereas with the kick we put everything on the sort of the groove on the beat, here we're going to put it halfway in between. So we're moving that along and doing basically exactly the same thing but shifted to halfway between the 4 beats, and then we're going to get this. Perfect. And last thing for the drums for now, we're going to add a snare drum because that's another important part of techno. Well, some techno, but the techno that I make. So we're going to take that snare in. Very nice. And we're going to do exactly the same thing and take the volume down on there a bit. That's probably a bit too much. So with the snare we want to put it on only the 2nd and the 4th in this track. That's kind of your standard drum groove. So you've got 1 kick, then 1 kick and snare, 1 kick, then 1 kick and snare. A pretty standard pattern, and you'll see it when I play it now. Perfect. So that's our drum pattern done, and that's taken us about 5 minutes. I don't know if you can see on the stopwatch, but so that's a good start. Now, the kind of techno that I'm going to show you how to make today is acid techno. So what we need to do is we need to get a synth that can make that kind of classic acid sound. If you're not familiar with the genre, it's the 303 is the classic kind of synth that did that, which is a Roland synth and incredibly expensive, but we're going to do it with a simple free plugin. Again, can be found in the PDF supplied with this, but this Tal LX7 row, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it because it's got a number in the middle, but we're going to go with that, and we're going to use this synth to create a classic 303 sound. So I'm going to name it 303 bass line, and now we're going to use one of the presets within the Tal thing to get us started, because there's actually quite a good 303 preset in here. So if you scroll down to the bottom section and we choose, where is it? Where is it? Ah, there we go. SY303 saw, which gives us this kind of classic, classic 303 sound. I'm going to start off with that. And if you've by any chance not got this preset when you download Tal, you can just copy all the settings on this window here, exactly as they look, and that will get you the same sound. So with a 303 loop, tends to be quite short, so I'm going to go for only 2 bars on this one, so it's going to be a little bit shorter than the kick pattern. It's going to repeat like that. So I'm going to drag it across so you've got a loop, and as we see here, we've got a loop marker there, so when we draw something in, it appears at the next loop. We're going to decide what notes we want. I quite like using D, so I'm going to go for that D. And with the when we're trying to make a 303 bass line, it's kind of important to think about how the actual 303 itself works. So in a 303 sequencer, this is the typical note length, which is like a quarter of a beat. And if we just copy across everything so we can hear how it kind of sounds as it just when it's played on one note, you get that kind of, which is kind of a standard 303 sound. But obviously what we want to do is make the rhythm a bit more interesting, give us a bit of a groove. So I like to take away the first note, always, that you get that first kick hitting before you get the bass line. So I'm going to do that on these two, so you're getting that kind of accented, like emphasized kick. And then I'm going to also take away the last one on those to give us an even bigger gap. We're going to see how that sounds for now. So we're going to copy that across into the next bar in a second. Let's copy that rhythm across. I like it a lot. The next thing to do is to choose our pitches. I'm quite liking that bottom D to start, but then I want to, thinking, let's give it an F, which will give us that kind of, that sort of slightly sad minor sounding kind of interval. And if I do that, and I'm thinking, deleting that one, so we're getting that at the start of the pattern. Yeah. And then I think we're going to take this up to the next D, which is higher, so we're going to get this kind of. And what I want to do is now make some of the notes slightly longer, because the 303 has this ability to extend notes over where there isn't one, extend it over the rest. So you get that kind of longer note sound, which gives the thing a more groove. So I'm going to actually make this a longer note. I'm going to make this last one a longer note, and this one, so we get this. And then what I'm going to do is copy this over to the next section and just fiddle with the things a bit. So what shall we do here? I'm thinking, let's see what happens if we take this up a little bit further and we take this to the A, and we take that back down to the F, and we get just a little bit of movement in that pattern. And we're going to, rather than have that last note long, we're going to have this note be long. Let's see what that sounds like. Cool, I'm quite happy with that. So let's make a folder for the bass. It's now only going to have this thing in, but it's just good practice in Reaper, I think, always to have your tracks organised. My tracks colour themselves automatically. That might not happen in your Reaper when you do this because it's a setting that I've set up. But if you download the project that I'm using, it might align for you depending on your settings. Bass. So that's kind of our, if we take the bass down a bit, we're going to have our basic kind of groove. And now I think what I really like in sort of acid techno is when they're using more than one 303 to kind of supplement the sound. So what I'm going to do is going to duplicate that track. I'm going to name it 303 bassline 2, and this is going to be the lower one. We're going to make this a little lower, and what I want to do is I want to take away these supplementary notes, and what I'm going to do is I'm only going to take sort of a few, so I'm going to delete some of these. Let's delete that, and we're going to delete that, just to give it a bit more rhythm, and then I'm going to take that down. So we've got a lower, so we're going to get this now. And what you can even do if you want to be really kind of clever is shift this along a little bit. In this case I'm not a huge fan of that, but often shifting it can be quite nice. What I might do is just shift our kind of long notes and see what we get with that. Okay, I think I'm going to keep it apart from the last one, so we've got that kind of sound. Perfect. So that's kind of going to form our bass line. Now what I really want to do is just make sure these bass lines aren't conflicting with each other too much. So we're going to use something called EQ to do that. And what I'm going to get is Reaper's standard EQ. Don't be overwhelmed by the amount of plugins in my screen here. It's because I own a lot. We're only going to be working with the free Reaper ones and the couple I've asked you to install in the PDF. So firstly the EQ, and we're going to go for a low pass, which allows only the low frequencies to come past. We're going to use this for the bottom bass line. So we're going to take it really low to like 600 Hertz. Nothing below that's going to come through. So if we just solo this track just to listen to only that one, and we'll hear it's a bit, whereas before it was. Right, what we're going to do is I think we're going to take it up a little bit more to 800. Cool. And we're just going to give it a bit of a volume boost because we've cut out quite a lot of the sound. So now, and then what we're going to do is with this, the first bass line, we're going to cut out some of the low frequencies so that they don't conflict. So we're going to go for high pass, which does the same in reverse, and we're going to go for like 150. So just that bottom line is the only one hitting those really low bass notes, and that's going to give us this kind of sound. I might even take this second bass line just actually 100, just to give a bit more. Cool. Now one of my favourite tricks for a good 303 bass line is to add a little bit of delay to the top bit, which gives us just that little bit more kind of interaction between the notes. So we're going to use Reaper's free delay plugin, Rio Delay, and we're going to just go for a really simple, we're going to go for the snare rhythm one. I like their presets. This one kind of keeps it grooving with a kind of standard snare rhythm, which is quite nice. I'm just going to take a little bit off the delay so it's not too much of it. I'm going to go to minus 16. The dry is how much the underlaid sound gets, and the wet is how much the delayed sound gets. So let's see how that sounds. Soloing the bass. I'm going to go for even less, we're going to take it to -20. Cool, I like how it sounds. Let's try it with maybe the kick rhythm though, just to be sure. Cool, I think I preferred the snare one. So we're going to take that back to -20. And let's see how that sounds with the drums. Cool, that's sounding good. Now, the next thing that I quite like to add to my mix is I like to add a little bit more groove in the drums with a percussion thing. So we're going to add another drum sampler and we're going to bring in the perk, which is going to give us that kind of sound. And I'm going to take that up to here and I'm going to make it the same length. And I'm just going to have it hit at like kind of groovy spots. It's like perhaps I quite like this kind of sound. I'm going to just drag it across so it's only happening there, and then do like a similar kind of thing in the middle there, and then I'm just going to stick one at the end, see how that sounds. The key thing with this is you just want this kind of hitting where the kick and the snare and the hat weren't, so you're getting a bit more of a groove. So let's see if I also put one. You know what, that should be fine. So I think I'm going to remove one of these and put this over here. Yeah. And then just going to stick that there so we've got a bit less, and we're just going to take that really, really down. And we're going to add a delay to this as well because again, to give it that sense of groove. But I'm going to go for the ping pong delay here, which will have it kind of bounce between the two channels in the stereo, so like bounce between your ears, and we're going to take that really low because we don't want it to be overpowering. Now the next thing that I'm going to want, I think, is something more in the high melodies. So we're going to insert another instance of this TAL plugin, and we're going to call it pad synth 1, because it's just going to play a nice chord, and there's a nice pad sound that I like to use in this synth. It's just the basic pad, just quite a classic one. We can also have a look through and see what else there is. We've got I think we're going to stick with that basic pad. So, and what's nice about what I like to do with pads is just have it kind of build over the time. So we're going to start with, and we're using a D, so we're going to go with like. I just like to fatten it out by having it have 2 Ds kind of across the thing, and then I'm going to bring that one short just for a different kind of, yeah, let's have that. So we're getting that. And then, well, that's quite nice on its own. First of all, let's give it some EQ so it's not interfering with the bass too much, because we want the pad to really be the high element. So we're going to high pass it at like 400 to 500, let's hear it. Nice, and because it's gone a bit thin now, I'm going to boost it sort of on around 1800 hertz area, because that's kind of where like the human ear kind of settles in. That's kind of a lot of the human voice contacts in that kind of region, so it's a nice area to boost if you want it to stand out. Now we want it to have a bit of a groove with the rhythm, so what we're going to do is we're going to use something called compression. So first thing we want to do is put that pad in a folder and call it pads. Next thing we want to do is use this root thing to drag the kick onto the pads thing. Now the key thing here is we're going to send it to channel 3 and 4, because what we're going to do is we're going to use the volume of the kick to control like the volume of the pads, so we'll get this feel of the pads grooving along with the kick. But to do that we have to send it to channel 3 and 4, and we want to make sure it's not sending any MIDI because we don't need it, and we also want to make sure that it's sending it pre-fader, so our volume, so when we adjust the kick volume it doesn't adjust the fact that it's working here. So we're going to stick that in, and then we're going to use something called compression. So we're going to use Rear Comp, which is Reaper's compressor, and I've got a preset that will do this, which I'll kind of explain. So this preset won't be on your version of Reaper, but you can copy the settings from here and I'll explain them. So basic kick slide chain. So what this does is it takes the sound of the kick that we've sent to the pads here, and it takes it to this auxiliary input which you have to select, and what it does then is as the kick hits it turns down the volume of the pads, and you can choose by how much with this threshold, and basically yeah, you'll see what it does when I get it going. So what we're doing now is turn down the pads by quite a lot. We want to do a bit less than that, so we'll take it to -14. And if we just hear the pads and the kick, we'll get this. So you'll see what it's doing. Getting that groove. Cool. So let's do that. And that is basically our acid techno track. I'm going to take the bass down a little bit. I'm going to take the kick back a little bit. And what I want to add now is some reverberation, just to kind of get this to all sound a bit unified. So we're going to add a reverb up here. And we're going to add Reaper's own reverb plugin. Where is that? So that's their reverb, and we're going to just use this preset. We're going to just take the dry mix we want completely gone, because we don't want the sound of the things we're sending it to. We just want the reverb, and we're going to just have the wet turned down a little bit to like -15. And then what I'm going to do is just drag each one onto it. And that should get us stuff being sent. So we'll see now when we play, you're getting that reverb. Okay, that's quite loud, so we don't want that much. What we're going to do is go into the routing section. I'm just going to take down the inputs. So we want a bit more reverb on the pads because they do it quite well. We want not so much on the drums to keep them nice and tight sounding, and then bass can be kind of in the middle somewhere. And we're going to get this now. Still a little bit much for me, but it's up to personal taste. So I'm going to take the drums down a little further. I'm going to take that to about -15, and I'm going to take the pads to -12. And now we'll get this. Yeah, that works nicely for me. So that's our basic techno track, and what I'm now going to do is apply some quick effects to get everything sounding good. So with the drums, I'm going to go to rear compression, and I quite like Reaper's actually got its own good drum process and preset, so I quite like the NY drum bus. If we just take the drums out, it's just gonna help glue them together a bit, because what compression does is like turn down loud sounds often to make them fit with quieter ones. So that's giving us just a little bit. We're gonna take the threshold a little lower because I don't want quite that much. Like about that much works well for me. Maybe even a little less. Yeah, that works quite well for me. Maybe some more. Stick it there. Yeah, to keep it nice and kind of pumping. we're going to take the dry mix down a little bit more to like -12 because we don't want too much of that. And then we're going to take the crest holder, even more compression. Cool, quite happy with that. Very nice. And then we're going to do a similar thing to the bass, but with the bass we're just going to do our own settings really quickly, or maybe we'll go off, is there a Reaper bass one? Let's see what happens if we use the driving rock bass setting. We'll just take the threshold a little bit more. And the next most important thing, now that we've kind of got things sounding quite nice, is to just quickly arrange it into a track. We've got about 4 to 5 minutes left on the counter, so let's get that going. So first things first, I'm going to drag this a little bit out so I can work with it. And classic techno start is just to start with just the kick and the hi-hat. So let's get that going. And let's actually make that go for 8 bars. So if I drag that out there, we're going to have nice. And then I think here I'm going to bring in the lower bass line, and then I'm going to have, what I'm going to do, so if you can split a section of dragged out track by pressing S, I'm going to split things here, and I'm just going to have us have that last bit drop. So we kind of then go into the main thing, and I'm going to take the hats away for a second. So we're going to come in, and we're going to save the percussion for a little bit later as well. So we're going to get this initial drop now. Nice. And then what we're going to do is we want a kind of build up to a second drop, I think. So I'm going to have a few bars here, and I'm going to bring this out, and I think we're going to bring the pads in here, and we're going to drag this over to here. Oh, you can do control and drag to copy, by the way, which I should have shown before. We're going to show what that sounds like. I think I'm actually going to switch up that drop. I'm going to move the main bass line to here, and I'm going to have the pads come in here. Yeah, that's nicer. I'm going to have one last kick on the first beat there. One last thing I want to add, because I feel like we can have a bit more excitement in the hi-hats. So I'm going to add a delay to the hi-hats. I'm going to go for that snarer than one that we used before. I'm going to take it down to like -16. But what we're going to do is do a special trick using the trim. feature, so we're going to have the hi-hats be pretty basic. So we're going to cut out the delay and bring it in later on. So this is how the hi-hats will sound with the delay. But we're not going to have that in the very start, so we're going to go to trim, which brings up this big kind of intimidating list of parameters, and we're just going to scroll along to the delay, and we're just going to go to bypass, which means it's, you know, when it's bypassed it doesn't appear, and we're going to create a new point here, and we're going to have it bypassed from the start until there, which will give us this. If I put the delay on the correct track. So we're going to get rid of that on there. So I've just done it on the wrong track, so give me everything. So we're going to clear and remove that envelope. Check that the percussion thing's working. Yep, click it back in, and then we're going to do the correct thing on this track. Go to the bypass and do exactly what I just did, but because I did it on the wrong track. So I'm going to create a new point, and we're going to drag that up so it's bypassed at the start. So that'll sound like this. And then we get in with the pop in. I'm just going to take the volume down in the drums a little bit because they're getting a bit too loud. I'm just going to take everything else down a bit in line with that now. I've just realised I forgot to take the lower bass across there, so we've got that. And we're going to have that same little gap in it before it starts again. Cool. And that brings me to just over time. We've gone for 32 minutes, but that is how to create a simple techno track in Reaper using only free plugins and stuff that comes bundled with Reaper.